Hello everyone, welcome to Cedar4.com. Today I have author Wesley M. White here with me to talk about his new book, Where Do We Go From Here? The answers to your questions about our next life. What I love about this book is how simplistic it is. It's so easy for, a reader who's not experienced with near-death experiences to come open up a chapter of his book, get the questions you have answered, and then to walk away, or just, you should just read the whole book. So, Wesley, thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
All right, so Wesley, tell us, I want to first talk about why you wrote the book. And I think a big probably topic, and you let me know how important it was the, about your son, Russell.
That was an impact, sure.
Yeah.
That brought on the extreme curiosity about the next life for sure.
So if you'd like to tell, without, going to all the painful details, what happened to your son, Russell?
He was killed in an auto pedestrian accident.
Gotcha. And how old was he?
2 years, 4 months.
Well, that must have been so painful. I'm a new parent, so when I read the first chapter, coworkers were like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "This is just so sad." Was he your youngest?
He was youngest of 7.
Oh wow! And then through that impact, that made you go, I want to know more about the next life.
Yeah, we had Kay and I, my wife, had both lost our parents by that time, and but they always took care of us. And of course, a 2-year-old is very needy, and you feel a real responsibility to take care of him. And we're picturing him as a 2-year-old and saying he's thrown into this new circumstance and this new world, and he likes his mommy, and we really wanted to know more about the atmosphere he was in.
Yeah, I've never thought about it like that. How you said that, where he might have he's left this world, he's gone to the next, but he's not with his parents. How is he going to be taken care of? Are you trying to get me to cry in this last?
No, I'm trying not to too. So
no, that's just if you were questioning, should I buy this book? Just the first chapter, just hooked me and wanting to know more, and I just love the simplicity of it, where you can look at the table of contents and you can see all the questions that it answers, and I go, and it's not like 30 pages in each chapter. I can get a nice answer on my questions. And now you haven't had an actual near-death experience.
I've not.
You've had one close. We'll talk about that later.
Oh.
But you brought in Rachel P. Anderson, who has had near-death experiences. Why was it important for you to include Rachel in this book?
Well, I actually would have included another young lady had she had the time, besides Rachel, but next door neighbors, her father and I are the same age and get along really well, a very close friend, and so we knew them through the time. Rachel was a senior in high school when she had her accident, and we remember that she wasn't expected to live, and saw what they went through and had some empathy a little bit too from what we had gone through, and then I saw how it changed her. She had a long recovery time, but then she's always had this serenity about her that just only that seems to come with most people who have a near-death experience. And I didn't have a desire to write a book. I had a prompting subject and to try to get it published, I felt like. And I thought, boy, I haven't had any such experience. It'd be really nice if someone told their story and then commented on the chapters who's really had the experience.
Yeah, because what you go through, because most near-death experience books, it's like the authors who have experienced it will go through like the entire journey. Yeah. And what you've done is you've had questions that everyday people will go through, and then you've brought in the experiences of others through tons of research on your part to make it cohesive. And then at the end of each chapter, you'll have Rachel also solidify such idea. What I want to focus on right now is you said how Rachel had like this serenity to her, and in your book you talk about how those who have gone through near-death experiences, they have like this understanding of the universe. They have this bigger understanding of life that makes them stand out to the rest.
For sure.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because they've had such a marvelous experience. They have found out. I think very few people know there's an afterlife. They suspect that there probably is some existence, and then we have made it kind of ghoulish, than zombies, and it's actually a very pleasant experience. And when you've had a pleasant, wonderful experience, then it just changes you and says, I have all these things to look forward to.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. Is like, you have something to look forward to, and you're not necessarily scared about what's coming next. And that portion comes from your chapter about being foreordained, and how we might have this plan for our life.
Yeah.
Do you find that? Have you found in your research or just talking with people that I don't know, that having a plan for your life, if you were to know the grander scale, you wouldn't be so scared about the plan of your life?
Well, absolutely. If you understand that you were with God before as a child, a beloved child, and now you're going through kind of a down a gravel road, however you want to say it, a tougher time, but there are better times ahead, then that gives a person a natural hope. Mm-hmm. And despair takes a toll on everyone, and these people who've had this experience don't despair.
You have a quote that's talking about how God has like made our lives. We're like an individual snowflake. All of our experiences are unique. And you had a funny story in the book about how you and your wife Kay were looking forward to going to Latin America on a mission. That was the plan.
Yeah.
And then God had a different plan for you, and he sent you guys to Florida.
Yeah.
And you had the mask up. We're super excited, but deep down not. But then when you arrived, you guys, what happened when you guys arrived though to your mission in Florida?
Well, yeah, it was. If you don't mind, they'll go into a little more.
No, go
detail.
for it. Go into more detail.
We tried to put up a facade. They had called us and said we would be serving a Spanish-speaking mission, and we lived in Panama in the military, and so my wife thought, I finally get to be immersed in Spanish. You have in your work, but I haven't, and so we have a handicapped daughter I mentioned in there. As the brethren looked at it a little closer, they thought this probably isn't a good overseas situation, and then I looked up how many people spoke Spanish in Florida, and it wasn't nearly as many. It just kind of, we had a plan, and this didn't really fit our plan. And then we got to the mission president's training seminar, and everybody, you look at everyone's name tag where they're going, everybody said, oh, that's where we hoped we were going.
Oh, really?
And it was kind of like salt in the wound for us because we were not going to have the immersion that we expected. But the Lord blesses you to understand these. As soon as I met a dozen missionaries, I knew they were my missionaries. It was just so plain, and it was gone in minutes. Said, these are the young people that we're supposed to work with. How could we serve anywhere else? And that was the end of that problem.
Yeah, I love that story because, as someone who is not as we're close to we're similar in age. We're similar in age, and I'm trying, as I'm starting this journey of life with my wife and kid, and we have all these expectations, these plans of this is going to happen by then, and whenever they don't happen, sometimes it's hard. You get discouraged. Is this really your plan, God? Because I'm trying to do everything, and yet there's always something beautiful at the end. and he makes you go. It makes you go. Okay, he does have a plan for me. So I love that you included that story in there because yeah, I think throughout the near death experience people they have. They have that serenity because they know there's a bigger plan. There's someone bigger.
Yeah.
Than them.
One thing that was mentioned, I've read a lot of NDEs, of course, and then the works of people who researched NDEs, and almost everyone is just surprised at how orderly everything is when you get the eternal experience, to get to see the big picture, at least part of the big picture. They said it's just all order.
Wow.
And I think, as part of the mortal experience, we have to see it kind of as if it were chaotic. But they see this is all laid out. There's somebody in charge. This isn't a ship without a rudder. This is all according to God's will and plan.
And it's got to be something comforting having that feeling, knowing that there's someone who's watching over you, and it's making sure that everything is going to go smoothly when you feel like you said, that the world is chaotic, especially in the times we're living in right now. Sometimes you might think, gosh, who's watching? Who's watching us? But, having that knowledge. So that's definitely a blessing that those who have had near-death experiences. In your research, did you find some discrepancies of people saying, I experienced this, and someone said, well, I experienced this, so yours. How did you bring about the book so everything was really as cohesive as you laid it out?
Well, I concentrated. I decided from the very start that I was going to be in harmony with the gospel. So the things that weren't in harmony with the gospel could have been because, as I'll taught in there, it appears that there's at least 7 major realms to the next life where you'll be assigned to one of them. And then this is, of course, before Judgment Day and the resurrection and the Judgment Day, and this is in further preparation. And I can see how different people at different levels in this, in a different realm or even a different portion of a realm, would come away with different perceptions. It only strengthened my testimony, and then most things I tried to find at least a couple of sources that supported it that I put in.
Yeah, there was a lot of research put into this book, which I really appreciate. It wasn't just, oh well, this is what I think, but you grab tons of sources, from prophets, from Joseph Smith to even a Dr. Mooney. It was really well researched. One of the questions that I found particularly interesting in your book was that are our days numbered? And I that one and the foreordained one, which we talked about, because my grandfather passed away 2 years ago, and he constantly talked about how he wanted to die first before my grandma, and that was his will. And he kept praying every night, God, take me, take my wife first before me. And, he wanted to be the one he wanted my grandma to die first. And it was the other way around.
Sure.
And, it kind of, reading the chapter, we've always thought, why did Heavenly Father, because now my grandma was left alone. She had to go into a nursing home, and why would Heavenly Father not answer those prayers? Was it planned? Was my grandpa's heart attack, was it random? What would you say about that? Give us a overall, I don't know, our days are numbered. Are they?
Well, I believe they are. President Kimball wrote, you'll remember his pamphlet, the Tragedy or Destiny, and he thinks that people can shorten their lives, but they can't lengthen them. I think we'll have to get to the other side to say, oh, that's why this was reasonable. Perhaps the Savior said, I go to prepare you a mansion there. Perhaps there were things that he could do there to prepare to make it better for the wife when she made the transition. It just kind of will all fall in place when our vision isn't so narrow as it is now.
Yeah, and David, I remember that quote from David O.K. that you put in the book that talked about how you can definitely shorten your lifespan by not, keeping the word of wisdom, keeping the law of chastity, by doing stupid stunts with your friends, with one of them holding a video camera saying, all right, do the backflip off the house. And, it shows how precious this life is and that we need to protect it. But what I also loved about that chapter was you went into detail about what happens when children die before their time, and I found that a huge connection with the very opening of your book when you talked about Russell. Why was that important to put so much emphasis on what happens to children who die at a young age?
Well, I can just give a short answer to that because we had experienced it and wondered his circumstances and how much he understood. And so,
did you find while writing the book? Have you had a lot of feedback from other parents who've lost children?
I've had a little. Of course, the book is pretty newly out.
Yeah.
But yes, I've had quite a bit of feedback from people who have lost a child or a parent. And,
I hope they found that chapter comforting. I thought that you just went into a lot of detail and research on it to, I don't know, comfort those. I've always, as a new parent, I've always wondered, what if my son were to die, pass away, and reading your book, made me feel those feelings. And I feel like if that were to happen, the first thing I'd go to, besides my niece, to my late father, would I'd open up Wesley's book.
Yes. Well, yeah, because we had a personal interest in learning that. I felt there would be lots of people who would have a real interest in what happens to these children.
Maybe you could give a quick summary on what happens. What happens from your research? What happens to children who pass on? Is it because it was their time? Is it because they were more righteous? I've heard a lot of different things from that.
And I don't have all the answers to that, but Joseph Smith taught, and I think most people who lose a child that the belief he was a prophet read that he said they were more pure, they were more refined. Our stake president was one of the speakers at our Russell's funeral, and the impression that he had was that Russell was involved in something before this life that he was needed to continue with this function project, whatever you want to call it. And he said, so his life was really just kind of a furlough, get a physical body and get back to what he was doing before. A niece was in a blizzard, was hit by a train, and she's the one who didn't have time at this time she was working on another degree, and she saw our son Russell from afar, and he said he was leading a bunch of people somewhere. Said didn't get to talk to him or anything, so
he was busy.
Yeah.
Must have been really comforting for you and your wife.
Mm-hmm.
How much, what did your wife think about you writing this book and going through the research? How big of a support was she?
I'm pretty type A, and life's a lot slower than it has been. Most of life's been pretty hectic and busy, and so she was glad to see me have a project for Sunday afternoons and such, and I still did lots of other things. I did the book over about 2.5 years, but
wow.
I would sit down for 5 or 6 hours sometime and
do the research
and read and research and tell her what I was doing. But she liked me having a project, and she was interested in the subject.
Well, that's awesome. Did she find comfort in some of the things?
She did, yeah.
Well, I'd love to. So you've never had a near-death experience, but you almost did. Well, you almost did in a C-130. You were a U.S. air pilot.
Air Force.
Love for you to tell that. Love for you to tell that story.
Oh, okay. Gosh, they won't buy the book if they learn the story. I was assigned to doing what's called flight test. You're testing different things with aviation, and it was really a lot of fun. The the people in the back of the airplane were smarter than we pilots. We were just kind of providing the airframe for them. But the Army decided they would like to make a smaller tank that they could actually air deliver to wherever they needed it quickly. It takes a long time to get a tank somewhere. But this smaller tank was still 36,000 pounds. So they wanted to test the concept of to have it airdrop from an aircraft. And so they put together 36,000 pounds of cement and steel and lead and made it about the size the tank would be to be air extracted from our airplane. And when you do that, some big chutes come out, and they're out. They're 100-foot. We had 300-foot chutes on it, and the chutes pull that load outside the airplane. Then the same chutes, by a fancy mechanism, bring it down slowly to the ground. And we got to where the drop point was, the area where it was supposed to be, and released all of the mechanisms that were holding it in the airplane, and the parachutes went out, and we had to go to full power, of course, with all the drag of those parachutes, and the load of junk got clear to the very back end of the airplane, and the strap that connected it to the 3 parachutes broke.
Oh my gosh.
So with that kind of a center of gravity, it just stood us right on our nose, and we were falling backwards out of the sky, even though we had our engines at full power, and nothing really we could do about it, and a view I'd never had from an airplane, straight up. And I looked at one of our instruments. It's called a vertical velocity indicator, and saw that we were descending at 4,000 feet per minute, and we were 3,000 feet above the ground. I quickly did the math and said, this is going to take 45 seconds. And you don't, in that time frame, have time to think, I wonder if my wife will remarry, or what about my kids? You just kind of think of little simpler things. We were at Edwards Air Force Base where they do test, and if you're killed doing flight test, then they name a street for you, and I thought, oh, I guess I'll get a street name. But there will be the pilots when someone said, what happened to him? Well, he was attempting hypersonic flight, or his engine failed and he rode it out so that he wouldn't take out a school. And what about White? Well, he backed his airplane into the ground.
Those are the thoughts that you had in those 45 seconds.
Yeah. And obviously I'm here to tell about it. We, because of the engines were trying to make the airplane fly, we had the thrust of the engines, plus there's a large flight control called an elevator, and it provides quite a bit of drag. And finally, the force of gravity overcame the friction that was keeping it in the airplane, and it fell out, and we just swapped ends. It was wonderful. I put in the book, I usually didn't like negative G's, but the negative G's that day were wonderful. And then it was kind of an Indiana Jones thing in that here we are, but our airspeed is down to 0, and you have to have air flowing over the wings, so we had to go down and skirt the desert floor for a little while.
That's terrifying.
To get up to speed. Yeah, we were all pretty shaken.
That sounds terrifying. And it's funny that you because you almost had a near-death experience where you didn't quite get to see the afterlife, but you got to experience those moments before. And that's funny how those are the moment. What that in that moment you decided, I wonder what they're gonna say about my street name.
Yeah.
I'm sure your wife thought that was awesome. I guess in our final points as we go towards the end of this, one thing I felt about this book. Where do we go from here? By author Wesley White is I just felt like this was a book on trying to understand the afterlife. As someone who might feel lost or just really going through a hard time and feels lost, that this would be the perfect book for them because they want to not hear about the experiences about other people's experience, but to understand where it goes. Why do you think people have that yearning to understand the afterlife?
Because we are embryo gods, if you want to call it that, and then we have all lost someone that we love, and I guess I kind of wrote it for one's personal understanding. I had in mind all the way through people who have lost a loved one who didn't really live the way that they had hoped they'd live, and that they're still involved in the plan of eternal progression with free agency, the atonement still applicable to them. They're still be encouraged in their progress to know that it's not a total disaster if someone dies with their life out of order. God still has a plan for them. And then I hoped a view of the next life would also inspire the reader to say, I'm going to step it up. I'm going to try to live a little better than I've lived thus far.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that was beautiful. And also, with the last chapter, I think you summed it up perfectly. But I love how you ended it with the idea of love. What is love, and how at the end of the day, all life is about understanding love. You said in the book, if you could summarize the book in two words, it'd be light and love. Mm-hmm. Light of God and the love of God. And then how you said that love is without a doubt the basis of everything. Why is that?
Well, because God is a God of love, I guess would be the only simple answer that I could give to that. But it's through love and service of others that we develop. You get your great joy out of your little boy, your son, and so loving your wife brings a great joy to you. Just to become like God, we've got to learn to eventually to love like God, and then love and light are you'll find very closely related in.
I'm trying not to cry. That was awesome. Mm-hmm. Wesley, thanks so much for coming to Cedar Fort.
Pleasure. I appreciate your preparation.
Oh, no problem. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Where do we go from here? The answers to your questions about Our Next Life, written by Wesley White and Rachel Anderson, is currently available on cedarfort.com. Get the questions that you have answered. This is a beautiful book. It's amazingly written. And once again, thanks so much for being here.
Okay.